for you, Mr. Ellison. Given the presentation that your team did in prosecuting Officer Chauvin, do you think that the outcome of this prosecution would have been different if it was handled by a different prosecutorial team other than your team?
Well, I don't want to be so arrogant as to assume nobody could have gotten the convictions. I will tell you this. I have seen prosecutions that lacked energy. I've seen half-hearted efforts. Give you an example. The prosecutor in the county where Mike Brown was killed by Darren Wilson, I believe that was in Ferguson, Missouri.
Yep.
He misinstructed the grand jury on the use of force. He told the jury in the instructions that it's lawful to use deadly force on a fleeing felon. Now, everybody who ever went to any lawyer and any cop knows you cannot do that. You cannot shoot somebody because they're running away. You cannot do that. That is unconstitutional policing. But that was in the instructions in that case. Or what about Eric Garner? You gonna tell me that using a chokehold that was barred by the department says you may not subdue people with this method. Well, Officer Papalone, I think it was Papalonatone or something like that. He did that, and Eric Garner was killed, and there's no indictment at all. You're violating departmental policy. Somebody dies as a result, and there's no indictment, no true bill. Come on, man. Or what about Daniel Cameron, who's a Black Attorney General in Kentucky? You're gonna tell me that this woman could be lying in her bed, get shot up, riddled with bullets, and nobody is culpable? Nobody. I mean, come on. It's just not. So I'm not going to tell you, oh, it could only be me. That's ego stuff. But there are people who put in weak efforts. There are people who haven't really thrown their shoulder into it. And I think that they're wrong for doing it. And people, like I said, people blame police all the time. But what about these prosecutors who are not fulfilling their oath? What about medical examiners who are like, well, I don't see nothing. Maybe he died from sickle cell. I mean, I'm gonna tell you, you want to get into some real shady stuff. Some of these medical examiners who won't call something a homicide that clearly is one. They escape all scrutiny, but they're part of the problem too. And so
that leads me to my next question, a segue here, and that is the presentation you made tonight is very powerful, is forward-looking, but I also recognize, as you're explaining here, it's not shared by every prosecutor in this nation. What does that say about our criminal justice system, and how do we reform?
Well, I urge young lawyers to, so look, I'm getting to be an old dude now. I'm 57 years old. I went to law school back in between 1987 and 1990. And my daughter is starting law school, which absolutely proves that I'm getting up there. So, but what's my point? And my son is a prosecutor in Ramsey County. So what's my point? My point is we've got to have cultural shifts on all levels. Remember, I talked about Amy Cooper. First of all, we got to change society, the attitudes of society. Then we've got to change the attitudes in law enforcement, prosecutors and police. We've got to help train prosecutors to say, look, it doesn't matter whether you work with this guy every day. If he broke the law, he broke the law. If you can't enforce the law against him, you don't supposed to be a prosecutor. Or if you won't, just hand it to somebody else who will. But don't let an injustice, a crime go by because that's your hunting buddy. Get out the way, right? There is a lot of cultural changing that we need to do. And it starts, I think, in society. But you get more prosecutors who say, you know what, I'm a minister of justice, not a minister of punishment. You know, you get more police officers saying, you know what, I didn't sign up for this and I'm not going to put up with it, right? You get more citizens demanding that equal justice occur. We'll get there. And but I think that this last summer gives us an opportunity. You had more multicultural people demanding justice than I've ever seen. You know, I mean, you had people I mean, if you look at the crowd that stood there demanding that Chauvin get off of George Floyd, half the people in that crowd were white people. I mean, it really is the case that we have a chance to change the historic narrative, and we need to
Yeah,
seize that moment.